Chuck, Dominick Cruz gets finished and sent via, I believe it was fourth round?
Fourth round.
Head kick. A close fight before that, but this was another step forward on this win streak for Marlon Vera. What did this say about his realistic chances in the sport's deepest division of cracking this title picture sooner than later?
Well, I thought that there's like a little Grand Prix going on, obviously with the bantamweight division being as stacked as, and all of those fights are happening within a month. So if this is the opening salvo, right, for a guy to come out and make his case, I don't think he could have made a better case. He was not being duped into a certain kind of fight with Dominick Cruz. I think in the past, Dominick Cruz has kind of bewildered opponents with his movement and doing all that stuff. It was almost like he kind of knew the chances would be there because he was able to drop Dom a couple of times, and then that head kick at the end was just perfectly timed. Came into contact right when he's leaning over to the side, and it's just a brutal knockout. Now, if you're trying to put that on the highlight reel and get ahead of all of the guys vying for that title shot, the next title shot, I think that's a pretty good foot forward.
Would you say that because, we're going to get to Dom Cruz in a second, what this performance said about him, but because Dom Cruz brought it, this was a rejuvenated, intense, ready to go, title, elite level Dom Cruz, that just raises what this victory says 100%. Even more about where Vera's at, right?
That, because I don't know how you're watching, but I'm sitting there, the narrative is all about Dom Cruz through 3 rounds. You're thinking this is 2012, 2011 Dom Cruz. He's moving around. I mean, his movement was insane, and he was mixing in the takedown threats. He was changing stances. He was doing all that stuff he used to do.
And he's winning the power shots, too.
Yes, and he was doing all of it. So it's like he really reminded me of the old Dom. I didn't think we'd see that again.
Yeah.
And to see it so effective, even through 3 rounds, I know the momentum was swinging just a little bit in that 3rd round, but I still felt it was his fight going into the 4th.
Did you think it was 2-0 Dom at the
I did think it was 2-0 Dom, and then the 3rd one was close. I know a lot of people right away were like, that's a Chito round, but in real time, I was like, that felt like a toss-up to me, to be honest.
Did we end up seeing where the cards were after? Because I felt it was going to be...
It was 2-1 Dom going into on all scorecards.
Because it looked, if that knockout hadn't happened right there, I thought Chito was winning round 4. It looked like it was going to be essentially up for grabs entering the 5th
That's
round.
So the momentum was swinging, but it would have been interesting to see what would have played out. I wouldn't have been surprised, obviously, if Dom got a 48-47 type of score on that.
Swinging like an open marriage.
Yes, just like that.
Just like us right now. It's great. It's great. I can swap partners very effectively. Marlon Vera is... there's something to it. We said it last week. There's a next level confidence with him right now that is fueling this violence. But, I said, is it Masvidalian? Do you get a 2019, I'm going to baptism type of feel? Maybe. But how about the poise? I would speak to the poise because it was almost as if Vera was never worried. Even as Dom Cruz would get off flurries, he dropped him in the first. Like, there were moments where Vera would show that he's in this fight, but he never pressed and was like, oh, crap, I'm losing this. I need to rush.
I feel like in the past, Dom Cruz has kind of freaked people out with his movement, and you would see them biting on a lot of his movement. You would see people kind of playing his game. I didn't feel like Chito was doing that. Even through the rounds when he was getting worked a little bit the first couple of rounds, he was staying the course. He was not, buying into every feint, every deke. Like, he was just kind of waiting for his shots. And honestly, it was working because he had the bigger shots. He was just getting out-volumed through the first couple of rounds, but he was still landing the bigger shots, ultimately, all told. It was a very patient, very poised. This is a guy who, at one point, was kind of an anonymous bantamweight. Like, he was going through... He had some big fights, but I felt like he would lose in a crucial moment. He was just kind of buried, but he's coming into his own at the exact right time. He's great on the microphone.
The crowd loved him.
Yeah, he's got Ecuador behind him. Like, you see the heroes walking.
That's a Mexican-American backdrop, San Diego, right?
Yeah,
and I feel like...
And he had him.
He had him, yeah, absolutely.
And that's Dom's home territory.
It's Dom's hometown, and yet it came fully around. Like, he is that bad. I mean, if you walk into a cage with a scorpion tattoo on the side of your dome, you're
pretty badass. My daughter was into that. She was like, I like his tattoo on his head.
His combination of tats, the long beard, and then just that. He had great sound bites leading up to it, but I like that he spun it back around to respect to Dom on the mic of like, no, we talked our trash, but look, he's
keeping it real, man.
Putting it together. He is very much in this title picture discussion. So I want to ask you the same question that I debated on Friday's episode with Rashad Evans is, look, in some ways it's wide open, whoever may have the best performance of these coming up top 10 matchups that are so must-see across the board. There's a bunch of them that we need to see. But I think we all agree that if Sugar Sean O'Malley beats Petr Yan, not only from his own words, but from his marketing value, from what he's saying, he's hearing, that he could cut the line. Is that fair considering Chito stopped him? I know there's an injury involved, but we can't look back on that and be like, it was a stoppage loss, right? It wasn't.
Yes. Fair, it's not going to be fair. But if O'Malley goes in there and does anything that's emphatic and wins that fight, he is guaranteed slam dunk to be the guy.
And
it
you
doesn't
okay with
matter. I get it. If you're putting him on the same card now, obviously he's got a new contract. He's getting paid. Now we see that he's like, okay, now I'll fight whoever you want to put in front of me. So if he's taking this challenge and he's going against a guy, and he's already doing a remarkable job, by the way, of selling this fight. So, kind of teasing that, he's the favorite and all this stuff. I love that sort of thing. But if he goes in there and actually does it on the same night as the Astro Bantamweight title fight, I'd be okay with it. I'd be like, all right, I get what they're doing.
The same night
it.
synergy, it's going to just...
It's all, you know how it is. This is the
all right,
recency
so
thing.
we have the champion Aljamain against Dillashaw on the same night, as you're saying, as Sugar Sean against Petr Yan. We've also got Corey Sandhagen against Song Yadong, Merab Dvalishvili up against Jose Aldo. Which one of those winners would make the most sense for the next move for Chito Vera? I mean, it depends on who wins, but,
right.
but what do you think?
This is tough. Maybe the Aldo Merab. I don't know. It's always very tough because there's also, I guess this is a winner. If Merab does it, maybe that would be the one. But I also feel like then you might be cutting out one of the guys who has like that nice gleam to them as they're going to the top. I'm not sure the UFC would want to saw one of them off before they get there. So I don't know.
But Chito's responded well when asked about this type of stuff,
I mean, he seems to be keeping it pretty realistic.
Because as we talked about on Friday's show, we played some sound that Shaq Majori had interviewed him for CBS Sports. And, he was basically saying, this is Chito. I wasn't willing to wait for O'Malley or Yan. Or basically, like, I'm not waiting on anybody. He wanted to fight Yan. There was going to be a waiting process. But now...
By the way, how big would that fight be again? The first time it happened, I felt like everybody was like, oh, Chito's going to get killed by O'Malley. Comes out different. Now you have a whole different setup.
That's
and I think
scenario.
Chito's kind of like, his star has shot up to a whole
Well, that's why I said this may end up working out for Chito, because if O'Malley beats Yan, which is not a automatic by any stretch of the imagination, and then if he wins the title, also not an automatic, you'd be looking at Chito as the first title defense, because it just makes sense, right? It's just it's a storyline that makes sense. He'd be right there.
I wish MMA played out just like this,
it
but it never does.
It never does.
There's probably some 11th player out of those 5 matchups, so you just know who's going to have the next title fight. That's how MMA works.
That's how MMA
Whoever's number 11 right now will be
Or whoever's the old guy closest to the phone when there's an injury, and then we're like, hey,
joke, man.
Mr. Faber, can you fill in? I mean, this happens.
I would like to see him finally get a title shot. That'd be great.
Despite the brutal, What's more likely, Holly Holm or Uriah Faber to get another title shot? Probably on the same night. Despite the brutal KO, this was kind of a moral win for 37-year-old Dom Cruz.
I think so.
He fought like he had turned back the clock. Is it that much of a difference of what he brought to the table compared to his victory over Casey Kenny, his victory over Pedro Munoz? Was it that much in your eyes?
I thought so,
an
man.
escalation forward?
Well, I think there are lingering questions, honestly, like, because he's gone through so many injuries and stuff, if he could even do the type of fight he was doing anymore. I honestly didn't know. And how old is he? He's like 36, whatever it is.
37.
I mean, obviously, age does catch up to you, too. I did not think he had that kind of fight still in him, to be honest. And to see his movement and everything he was doing in there, and, he was carrying some power. I think he was doing very well in the exchanges. And he hasn't really been knocked out. I mean, this is a knockout. I heard people saying like he should retire after this. I'm like, are you kidding me, man? This guy like was showing his full resurgence. It is weird that he's a commentator and he's a fighter.
Yeah.
But he's still got a lot of fight left.
He has a lot of fight. Now, look, he's in the deepest division where if he had won this fight, we'd have to start thinking about how quickly can they throw his name into a title scenario. He would have been very up high on the list. This takes him out of the immediate title picture. Yeah. It couldn't be more log-jammed and deep of names old and young. But if he's just looking to still make high-level fights and be given a sort of, I always say the Rich Franklin plan, given an old guy sort of gravitas, because the UFC, as Luke always says, doesn't do a good job of letting people exit in age. From throwing Anderson Silva at Derek Brunson and Cannonier, where you're just like, what are these fights leading to? Nothing.
There's no graceful outs.
There's old guy fights for Cruz if he wants to do it, and they could be main events.
Well, the Aldo one eventually. This is one that's been that legacy fight.
Dillashaw rematch at some point?
Dillashaw. I mean, you have those types of guys, depending on how their fights play out, or when they themselves are kind of plucked from the running, at least momentarily. I could see any of those fights making sense. But the Aldo one I would love to see. You came up at the same time as me watching those guys. That they really held down those divisions for so long. You'd love to see it, man. The WEC guys.
Shout out to WEC. Yeah. We had Demetrius Johnson on here going, hey, how about a trilogy one day? I mean, much harder nowadays.
We were saying that more than him.
Yeah, he's like, I was never interested in that. I was very interested in that. Thank you very much.
He wants to get into gardening. He's not even into MMA anymore.
Big performance, though, altogether from Chito. So looking forward to see where he goes from here. Only up. He is really putting it all together, from the confidence to the conditioning to the poise. It's incredible.